Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you feel drained, taken advantage of, or used after interacting with someone or a group of people for a long time, or maybe even for a short time? Well, I have more times than I can count, and this happens to be a very common experience that stems from being overly agreeable or not setting clear boundaries. So today, we'll be talking a little bit about why and how you should set clear boundaries. Hello, and welcome to the Praise Arrow podcast. The reason I thought this would be a good topic to share here is that recently I was discussing with a friend of mine about what it's like to give so much of yourself to people and do so much for them, but you're not getting a reciprocal response. And as he was sharing his experience, I was thinking at first, it's great to do stuff for people. It's not a bad thing. But then I realized, he's probably right about it being tiring, because he said it was tiring. And if you're doing something in general, and every time you do that, you come away feeling used, then there's probably something wrong there, even if you're doing that with good intentions, right? So if you do something with good intentions, you come off feeling fulfilled in that, and like you're gaining a sense of accomplishment from this, that's great. You might even come off feeling tired, but still fulfilled. But if every time you do that or have this interaction, you come away feeling used and like you're not getting anything out of what you're giving, be it mental, like you might give something physical, you might give something of monetary value, for example, and you don't necessarily get money back, but you feel that this was a useful exchange of some sort. But if you're not getting anything, let's say, not that you're not getting anything, but you are feeling constantly used by doing that, then there's something wrong. And my first line of thought was maybe you have not. That can happen when we do not set clear expectations, because sometimes we're doing something and subconsciously we have set an expectation of what we want the other party to do in return. This is what I expect this person to do based on what I'm doing for them. But we haven't communicated that. But we assume that the person should be wise enough, aware enough to know that this is what they should do. And that's not always the case. But what happens is that with time, when we're doing that, when we're giving, and we do not see what we're expecting, it can lead to a buildup of resentment, right? And that's why it's important to communicate what our expectations are. At the start of the episode, I said that one of the things that leads to that feeling of being drained is being overly agreeable. And agreeable people are always seeking the path of least resistance. So someone asks you for something, help, or anything else, and you find it very easy to say yes and so difficult to say no. But the people who say yes all the time are not necessarily the nicest people. Okay, let's say they're nice because the general definition of nice right now is, okay, the person is willing to help out. So let's say they are nice, but they're not necessarily the most well-intentioned people. It could just be that they're trying to avoid trouble, and that is the case with most agreeable people. They just don't want a confrontation of any sort. I'm very agreeable, so I know, we just do not want a confrontation, want to stay out of trouble. Like, okay, yeah, get out of my hair. No, I didn't mean like that. Not necessarily get out of my hair, but we just want peace, right? And so it's like, if I could trade an hour of my time doing something I don't necessarily want to do, but in return get peace and avoid a confrontation, then I will do it. But the challenge is that you can only do that for so long. With time, if you keep doing this, you keep doing things you really do not want to do, it's not coming from a place of charity or good intentions. You're just trying to avoid that confrontation. And so you keep doing this thing. With time, resentment builds up. And the day that you suddenly let those emotions out, the other person is wondering, okay, where is this coming from? Because you've been constantly doing this without making it clear that you expected anything in return. But you finally got to the breaking point and you just pour all that negative emotion out there. That's a consequence of not stating what you want and not setting boundaries. And when we talk about setting boundaries, it's not about being confrontational or rigid or rude. It's really about trying to respect your own needs and letting people get to the point where they respect that as well. So you're building you're building self-respect, and then bringing people to the point where they begin to copy that respect that you're already showing yourself. And when you do not set boundaries, you're opening the door. You're letting people know that, okay, you can overstep my limits because I have not made those limits known. And it begins to take a toll on you emotionally, and you get stressed mentally simply because you could not say no or let people know where the line has to be drawn. And as I spoke with my friend, a very interesting question he asked is, how do you set these boundaries without coming off as rude? And what I thought is, it's not always possible to not come off as rude, especially in the beginning. You step into a company, for example, and everyone tells you, oh, there's this guy. Let's assume you have to ask a question sometimes after work hours, and they just let you know this person is not going to answer your question after work hours. And sometimes something important may come up, something that seems important to you, really important, and you really need that quick answer. You're trying to put a call through and they just do not pick up. And you're so upset, frustrated, because you're thinking, this was so important. But then they let you know the next day, I'm sorry I didn't take your call, but it is my personal rule not to take calls after work hours. And of course, you're not obligated to, but you expected that, as for being nice, they would pick up that call, maybe because you sent them a message to say this was really important. Well, like I said, they're not obligated to. And you will realize that probably the sky did not fall after they did not pick the call. What will happen is that with time, you learn to strive to ensure that whatever you need from that person is done on time, because you know for a fact that after this time, that person is not going to respond. So at first you might have seen them as rude or whatever the case may be. And maybe this is not an ideal example, but I'm sure you will get the point. So maybe you might have seen them as rude in the beginning, but with time, you begin to respect them. And when you step into an organization, it's very easy to see that the nicest in quote, the nicest people often are the ones that get trampled on, because everybody just feels that they can do whatever they want with them. And those people who everyone says is strict or unapproachable, those people who are strict and unapproachable in quote, those ones seemingly get the most respect. So I'm not talking about being intentionally rude or mean, but just being the kind of person that makes people understand this is where I draw the line. And people will respect that with time. But you have to be able to sail through that initial point, especially when you're new in a place. And, when you're new somewhere, you often want to be in the good graces of everyone. But you do not have to be in the good grace of everyone. And one person who has taught me this is a roommate I had, and I love her so much. She just tells you exactly what she thinks. Well, there are times when it can come off as harsh. There are those times. But for the most part, her base character is, if this is all she can take, and it's like, I do not have the time to do this, or I have planned to do this at this time, and so I can make an exception, she will tell you. She will tell you she cannot give this or she cannot do this. She will tell you. And if you upset her, you have done something that got on her nerves, or you've been doing something that has been getting on her nerves, she is going to tell you. And she might seem really upset when she tells it to you, but you are sure of one thing. The moment she has said that, she has put it down, she has let it go, she holds no grudges. So if you're keeping that in your heart and you're like upset, oh, we have a thing now, I'm upset with her and she's upset with me, you're just doing that on your own, because she has moved on. The moment she told you all her grievances and what she doesn't like about what you're doing, she expects that you understand now, especially if you have apologized. The understanding is, this person now knows what they've been doing wrong. They're probably not going to do it again. And we have moved on and we are fine. And I love that attitude, because I was always sure that I knew where we stood. It's very difficult when you have hurt someone, upset someone, and they do not tell you, and they go around smiling. And I tend to do that sometimes. It's very unhealthy. and they just go around as usual. Maybe sometimes they're actually trying to forget about it and maybe just hope that everything returns to normal. The thing is just that I think sometimes we overestimate ourselves and where our cap is and how much we can really take and still remain normal. So I've had moments where I didn't even recognize myself, like the day the final straw broke, and I just had this outburst, and I was like, oh my gosh, what was that? Because even I was not expecting that from myself, because I thought it was really fine. I thought I was really fine with it, but I didn't know that I was getting to that breaking point. So it's important to be able to let people know, like communicate what you're thinking. And sometimes people do not communicate what they're thinking because they're afraid of what happens if the other person doesn't do it. If you have let this person know that this is the boundary and this person keeps crossing the line, that then it's like, oh, then I have to have an actual confrontation, because if I haven't said it, I can pretend that they don't know, right? I can pretend they don't know that this is annoying, and I can just try to get by like that. But the moment you have told them expressly and very clearly what your expectations are, and they keep crossing that line, then it's going to lead to a confrontation. And a confrontation sometimes is necessary. It is necessary sometimes, not with ill intentions, but with the intention to ensure continued collaboration. Let's put it that way. If you want to have proper cooperation in the future and ensure continued collaboration, you have to maybe in the beginning have some rough encounters here and there, but it will eventually lead to mutual understanding. And that happens in business, happens in relationships. And I think it's kind of weird, not that I'm the best person to talk about this, but I think it's kind of weird if you're in a relationship for a long time and you have never for once disagreed about anything. I don't mean like fight, but you've never for once disagreed about anything. It means probably, and I say probably to make room for the, for the outlying situations, those few exceptions, but probably one person or both people are not making their expectations clear. And it will get to the point where someone will reach breaking point, right? So it is important to make your expectations known. I've said that so many times, so I'm sure you get the point. And one thing I want to emphasize is that it is never too late to set boundaries. I mean, you might be past the ideal time, but it's not too late to set boundaries. Some people feel, and I've had this feeling every now and then, that everyone is already used to me doing this. Everyone is already used to me acting this way, and it's going to be so weird, and it's going to cause so much commotion, and it's going to cause a stare if I suddenly say, okay, I can't do this anymore. Or like, yeah, guys, I haven't really been happy about this. It's like, oh, so you've been keeping this in your heart and you didn't say anything about this? Or what do you mean? Like, why are you suddenly changing? That sort of thing. Well, change is normal, and you should be more concerned about how that relationship or how those relationships will deteriorate in the future, how those relationships are going to deteriorate if you do not make your expectations clear. Like, how long can you really go on like that? And sometimes if it's a few months, I try to, just put up with a situation like, okay, I'm going to do this for a few months and get out of here. But there's only so much you can take, really. And if you want to cooperate with someone or a group long term, then you really have to make it clear where you stand. And so it's your life. It's your life. I think that's the most important thing you should know. It's your life, and you have the right to change what doesn't work for you. You have the right to direct your life along the path you want it to take. And if part of that direction includes changing your personality and the way you relate with people, then go ahead and do that, because everyone has their own life to live, and you cannot continually twist and bend to suit everyone's desires and just totally ignore yourself. That's a recipe for disaster, really. So once again, if you find yourself feeling used or unfulfilled in a relationship, it might be a sign that your boundaries need strengthening. So take the time today to reflect on what's important to you and learn to communicate your boundaries clearly and confidently. And remember, it's never too late to start setting boundaries. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Bye!